Hello friends, SimPilot here. Welcome back to the 8th episode of our tutorial series. This is a special tutorial because I wanted to do something special after seeing that the channel hit over 200 subscribers, to be exact 205 by the time I was recording this video. And I appreciate every one of you and the support you have showed and the interaction between the episode through the comments and all that. So it was a great experience for me. We are at London City Airport, as you see in the background. That's the beautiful view of London, and I think that never gets old. It's amazing. The textures have their own problems at the moment, and my settings are not the highest, but this still looks amazing. So what we are going to do today is, as I said in the comments, we are going to take the Beechcraft King Air 350 for a spin, and we will also look into the cockpit layout, the buttons and their functions, as well as the startup procedure in a little bit more detail this time. Before we start, if you want to get notified for the future episodes, please don't forget to subscribe. And as I keep saying, these tutorials are designed to build on the knowledge from the previous episode. If you haven't seen those, I highly suggest you to watch those episodes before you watch this one. Everything will make more sense if you do so. Without further ado, let's jump into the cockpit and start looking into the startup procedure and buttons and switches and cockpit layout in general of the Beechcraft King Air 350. Okay, we are at a cold and dark state. I have my TRACA AR today, so I might turn it on at some point to have some help with the views. But for now, I'm gonna stick to the normal camera movements with the right button mouse click. As you see, there is nothing turned on, but just to get the general understanding of the cockpit layout, this is your fuel panel over here, and this is your crossfeed overrides. They are usually set to auto so that it crossfeeds from the, not crossfeeds, but it feeds from the auxiliary tanks to the tanks, the normal tanks, as you consume fuel. This is your crossfeed selector. Now it's turned off. You can turn it to crossfeed from the left to right tanks, or vice versa, from right tank to the left tank, right auxiliary and right fuel tank, I mean. And that's about it. The rest is not functional at the moment. They are in-up. Over here is your communications panel. Actually, the top two is working. I wasn't able to get these bottom ones working, and these are used for receiving the Morse code transmitted by the VOR stations or DME stations or ADF stations, which stands for Automatic Direction Finder. I wasn't able to get none of them to work, and I think that's pretty much it for this panel. You can switch this between COM1 to passenger announcement and so on and so forth, and you can adjust the volume, but it doesn't do anything, or I wasn't able to simulate what it was supposed to do. Over here is your electrical panel, your battery switches here, your alternator left and alternator right, which is used to charge your batteries when the engines are running. This one is the avionics switch, avionics master, which turns avionics systems on. Let me get a little bit closer so that we can take a closer look. This one is not working, that one is not working. This is your ignition. We will touch base on this later. These are your auto ignition arm switches, your engine anti-ice, and that's about it for the switches that you can click over on this panel. Here is your lights panel, your landing lights, your taxi lights, your wing ice light, your nav lights, and your recognition lights, which are at the wing tips of this aircraft. And if I have to show you, those lights are right there at the wingtip around here, and you can take a look at that if you are interested. Brake de-icing is not working. Airframe surface de-ice is working, and you can set it to manual or you can set it to single. Stall warning is not working. These are your pitot heats that I discussed in the last tutorial. The pitot tubes are used to measure your airspeed, and if they get clogged by ice, you won't get any airspeed reading in your instruments. So these are turned on if there is a chance for icing. Your landing gear switch or landing gear lever, your beacon light, and your strobe light is here, and this one comes with a tail and floodlight or logo light, in other words. I think that's about it. Nothing else over here is working. Over here none of these works, and these are for the displays. The flap display works. As you move your flaps, this gauge will move to this white area of the gauge for takeoff flaps, and the landing flaps is all the way to down. This is your pressurization setting. As you climb your cabin altitude, and the pressure is displayed here. I don't know how accurate this is, but you get to see some stuff over here. And for the rest of the buttons over at the co-pilot side, over here nothing is working, or they are all in-up at the moment. This is your MCP, in other words your autopilot panel. Most of these are working. VNAV obviously is not working at the moment, and this CPL is not working, and that's the only thing that's not working on this panel, and we will come back to this when we are going through the setup procedure or the startup procedure. Over here, this is your throttle lever, your trim, pitch trim, your propeller RPM controls, your mixture control is here, feather is not working, fuel cutoff is not working, flaps, the flap selector or flap lever is working, your aileron trim and rudder trim is working, but that's about it over here on the throttle quadrant. Down below, this one has a beautiful flight management computer, but nothing is operative at the moment. Even with this barometric pressure setting, which sets the barometric pressure for the PFD display, is not working. You have to use the B on your keyboard, BK, Bravo on your keyboard to set the barometric pressure, and you don't have any option to set it with a knob. Only thing that's working is this menu button, and it's useless because you can touch the screen and get the same menu displayed. You don't need to go and look down here to display that menu. Over here, this is your cabin pressurization setting, and this works. So you can set your pressurization altitude, and it will follow it accordingly. I don't know what this rate does, but I think it's how the cabin is pressurized, and there is a pressure dump test switch that you can test, and this rudder boost is not working at the moment. And that's pretty much it for the interior of the aircraft. This is your fuse panel, and there is another one over at the co-pilot side. In the real life, if there is a problem with the fuse, these fuses pop out and you will see a white ring around the fuse, which is easily visible to the pilot to identify any fuses that are tripped, and that needs to be fixed before you can get your clearance and take off. And that's pretty much it for the cabin layout. The overhead panel luckily is working most part. The master panel lights is your panel lighting over here and down below on the displays. One thing I like about King Air 350 is you can set the brightness of the PFD and MFD through here. This is your instrument panel brightness, this is your this is your instrument panel brightness, this is your display brightness for the pilot side, and these are the instrument co-pilot instrument and display brightness over here. This is your side panel brightness, this is your overhead panel brightness, this is the glare sheared brightness, and this is the floodlight over the co-pilot that's here, and then there is another one over the pilot which you can also turn on from here and adjust the brightness. So these are all working. On the other hand, these switches do not work. The electrical bus selector switch or meter, voltmeter, works, and you see how much electricity is generated by external generator, left or right generator, so on and so forth. When you flick this switch, this one is not working, and this is turning on the master panel lights or turning them off. And that's pretty much it for the overhead panel. None of the other buttons are working. There are some that works over here. I thought, yeah, the pitch trim works, but it's hard to do from here, and the rest is just toggling the yoke visibility, pretty much. So how do we start the King Air 350? So there are two ways of starting the engines, and I will show you both. Let's start with the first option. And to properly start it, first thing you need to do is obviously turn on your battery, and then your PFD displays will turn on. We don't turn on the avionics yet, but we have the engine display over here on this side. Next thing you want to do is move the proper RPM controller to about like 15% or somewhere close, and then this is the first way of starting the engine. What you do is turn on your auto ignition, which you would normally do when you are passing through clouds and when there is icing possibility. This constantly generates sparks in the engine and reduces the risk of engine going out, but it can also start the engine. I don't know if this is the correct procedure, but it starts the engine, so I wanted to show you guys this one as well. So after turning this on, what you do is, and I think this is where I need my TRACA AR to help me with the views. You hold this switch down, okay, and then the propeller will start spinning, as you see. And now it is time to watch the prop RPM as well as the ITT, and you will see the fuel flow down below that says 26, and the prop RPM is increasing as well as the ITT, and when ITT reaches, I believe, 400, and it will turn to green here in a second, and you can let go of the switch, and the engine is started right now, and you can also turn on the auto ignition. So this is one way of starting the engine, and as you see, it's started right now and it's running properly. The other way of doing the engine start, I will show with the right engine over there, is to flick the switch up, and I think this is the correct way of doing it in real life, and the engine will start spinning. There you go. And when you see fuel flow over here that says 0 right now, it will say, I think, 26 or something. This is where you move your RPM control to roughly 15, and then watch the engine coming to life. And this is the other way of starting the engine, and this is much more easier, and I think this is the real life procedure. I haven't checked the manuals yet. And we clear the master caution and check the warnings. It says low voltage because we haven't turned on the alternators. This is what we do after the engine start, so that we can charge the batteries and we can turn off the ignition, because after a successful start you have to turn off the ignition switch back to off. You don't want to continuously use your spark plugs. That's for real life, obviously. And there you have it, the engines are now running. Obviously before even starting the engines you have to turn on your nav light and the beacon to let the ground crew know that you are about to start your engines. I forgot to do that, but this is done before the engines start. And it says pitot heat, so you can turn on the pitot heats. If the weather is nice enough you don't have to, but that's a warning. Actually I think that's a caution, not a warning, or vice versa. So now engines are started, the alternators are on, we can turn on the avionics and we will get our displays. From this point on I will share some extra stuff that I didn't cover during the G3000 tutorial for King Air 350, and that will be the VOR. If we go here, go to the flight plan and check the nearest VOR station, right? So that's LAM and the frequency is 115.6. So when we go back and then set the nav1 frequency to 115.6 and transfer, now we started to pick a VOR signal. If we go back and check the bearing of the VOR station, it says 24, so that is our course which we can set from here, and I believe I just talked about this in the last episode. When I set this course to 24, watch how the course deviation indicator moves towards to the center of the line, and as I hit 24 it perfectly aligns. So that means now I'm receiving the signal and it's aligned to the course. Now if I track this course and set my heading to track that course, I will be perfectly aligned with that VOR station. Okay, and let's take a look at a second one, which is this big BIG Bravo India Golf 115.10, and the course is 184. If I go back and set my nav2 to 115.10, enter, and if I change my CDI source from VOR1 to VOR2, we should start picking the signal if I enter the frequency right. Let's go and check that one more time. 115.10. Alright, and now let's double check that 115.10. What I need to do is I need to adjust my second course, which is this guy over here, to 124. Oh, that's a little bit too much, I guess. That's 124. We can put the bearing, and we are not picking a signal, so let's double check that the frequency is right. Nearest VOR 115.10. Oh, that's 184. Okay, let's try this one more time. 115.10, transfer. Now we are picking a signal, and then we can adjust the course to 184, and as I get close you will see the needle moving, and that's telling us the same thing. Now our course is adjusted, and if I follow this course I will end up reaching to that VOR station. Okay, so that's how you set up your VOR stations in the King Air 350 and G3000. And obviously this is going to change your CDI source from VOR to FMS, but you still have the VOR needles because we turned on the bearing pointers. If I turn them off, they will disappear and we don't get to see those needles if you want to declutter your view. As I said, there is no wind setting in this G3000. That's a bummer, but that's how it is. And as I said, you cannot set the barometric pressure over here. Even though you can set it over here, this is your standby, and that doesn't make any sense. The other thing is these two are working, so you can turn the COM1 radio receiver audio to off. This means you won't get to hear what ATC is saying. If I turn the ground and then request something like, let's say, power supply, you will hear the pilot speaking because it's in the cabin, but you don't get to hear the response until you turn this on. Let's try this one more time. Request power supply. Yes, we are the one speaking right now. We don't hear anything. When I turn this on, we start to receive the audio from the ATC. So these two are working for both COM1 and COM2. NAV1 and NAV2 is used to receive the Morse code from the VOR stations or DME stations. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to replicate this or simulate this in this aircraft. It works in G1000 and in Cessna 172. You can literally listen to the VOR station's Morse code. If you know Morse code, you can identify and it will tell you the code of the VOR station, like the one you see over here. It says Lima Alpha Mike. You will hear the Morse code for L, A, and M, and that's another way of identifying that you tune to the correct VOR station, and that's commonly used when you are navigating using VOR. It's essential to have that and listen to that to make sure the frequency you're tuned is for the correct VOR, so that you don't navigate to somewhere else. So I think these are the functions that I wanted to share on top of what we have seen in the last episode. To get rid of the menu, you click to the HSI, horizontal status indicator, and it will make it full screen from split screen. And from here we are pretty much ready to taxi, but I want to show and share the flight plan. Our flight today is going to take us from London City Airport all the way to Brussels. So we will cross the sea and do an ILS landing to Brussels. I might edit the video to keep it as a reasonable length, but this is the flight that we are going to do today, and we are pretty much ready for IFR clearance and taxi. I wasn't planning to use the ATC, but I just wanted to give it a try with this full flight to see how bad it is or what has been fixed, because the descent altitude calculations was a little bit off with the in-game ATC, so we'll get to test that as well.
City ground, Sim Pilot 205 IFR to Brussels, ready to copy. Sim Pilot 205 is cleared to Brussels Airport as well. Take off runway 27 climb and maintain 10,000 feet. Departure frequency is 118.475 squawk 1424.
Let's read back and set our altimeter. So that's 10,000. A little bit too much. And this code is already entered. This is automatic for some reason. I don't know if it's from assistance or whatever, because I don't have any assistance turned on in terms of AI co-pilot or AI control, but somehow this code is entered automatically rather than me entering it manually. But well, I think we will leave with that for now. So now the autopilot is set. We can turn on the flight director. We will be using vertical speed to climb. We can turn on the nav mode. This half bank is going to cut your bank angle into half so that you don't bank your aircraft while turning, to keep your passengers a little bit more comfortable. And yaw damper is going to dampen your rudder or yaw, so that your aircraft doesn't bounce around when there's turbulence, or it bounces less. We will turn on the autopilot later on, and the yaw damper too, because in real life it's quite dangerous to turn on the yaw damper on the ground. So now let's see where we are going to taxi. Let's zoom in a little bit and see where we are at. So we are taking off from there, so that means we are directly taking the, let me go there and close this window. We are going to take this taxiway. We have to go through the runway, take this right, and then swing back and line up on the runway for our takeoff. So let's ask for the taxi clearance and let's get going. And I'm gonna turn on my TRACA AR to make it easier to see around when I'm taxiing.
City ground, Sim Pilot 205 with Sierra ready to taxi IFR. Sim Pilot 205 taxi to and hold short of runway 27 via taxiway. Contact tower on 129.455 when ready.
Okay.
Taxi to and hold short runway 27 via taxiway Sim Pilot 205.
We got our taxi clearance, and if you have noticed, my call sign is 205, SimPilot 205, and that 205 is the current number of subscribers to the channel. So I just wanted to put it there to thank you guys one more time. Okay, we are ready to taxi. Let's turn our taxi lights. Taxi lights are turned on. Beacon is already on. Strobe, you only turn on strobe when you are entering the runway. Reconditioning or recognition lights, which I was talking about, are these lights over here at the tips of the wing, which you don't see, and they are sort of night lighting, so we will keep them off. Alright, and I have the taxi ribbon, which I shouldn't have. I should have turned that assistance off, but I'll leave it there for now. Okay, we released the parking brake and we are pretty much ready to go. Let's check our flight control surfaces. Full left, full right, full forward, full back, left rudder, right rudder, and toe brakes. All looking good. Now we can move our prop RPM reverse to 100% and give her a little bit of power. And we will probably move shortly, and I don't want to butcher that guy, so let me just take the right a little bit. Okay, so we are moving. If you hit the space key, you can look a little bit from above to the runway or to the taxiway in front of you, so that it's easier to see the taxi lines, or you can look at the screen, which is the beauty of G3000, and I believe G1000 has this in some of the aircraft, so that even if it's dark or even if it's IFR conditions and you don't see anything, you can still go and taxi around the airport to the runway by just checking the screen, even if it's pitch black in the night. So that's a good addition. Oh man, this airport is beautiful. This is the Orbex London City Airport. This is one of the first scenery that came to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and I just wanted to give it a try, and it looks beautiful. And they just updated it to fix some problems. Now it's better than how it was, but the launch or the release version was also looking great. We are getting close to the runway. Let me reposition myself on the chair for a more comfortable flight position and to have more control over the rudder pedals. I was like sitting to the side to get close to the microphone. By the way, I'm trying out a new microphone. I hope this improves the sound quality a little bit. Please let me know in the comments if the sound is better than the previous episodes. I just want to make sure this microphone is helping me with the sound quality, because I wasn't happy with the sound quality at all when I was using my headset microphone for recording. So this is a desktop microphone with a pop filter. Hopefully the quality is better with this guy. So we are about to enter the runway, but we will hold short at the holding point and ask for takeoff clearance. Right about there, as you see, we are getting close. Hit the toe brakes, and I think this is okay. We can just swing to the left when we get our clearance. So let's get the tower and takeoff clearance.
City Tower Sim Pilot 205 ready to go runway 27 IFR to Brussels. Sim Pilot 205 cleared for takeoff runway 27.
Okay, we have our runway takeoff clearance from the ATC.
Runway 27 Sim Pilot 205.
So from now on I'm gonna let the AI co-pilot take care of the communications. Now because we are entering the runway, let's turn on our landing lights and turn on our strobe light. And we are good to go from here. Let's apply some power and let us line up to the runway. Alright. Somehow this taxi ribbon is pointing to the wrong direction, so if I follow that one, there will be very short runway left for our takeoff. It's I think another bug, and I think they know it. Oh, look at that view of London City. It's beautiful. Alright, let's get going. Let's set our flaps to takeoff. Flaps are set. And we will turn on the autopilot after hand flying a little bit, following the runway heading. Give her some power, let the engine stabilize, and let go of the brakes and apply more power. Be careful when you are adding throttle not to over torque the engine. And this aircraft's rotate speed is around 90 knots, so we will wait for that. Airspeed is live, and we are nicely accelerating on the runway. I'm applying forward pressure to the stick to keep her on the ground until we hit the 80 knots, and now we are good to go. Okay, we have a positive climb. Now we can get rid of the landing gear. Shortly after, and this radio altitude you see here is the altitude from the ground, not your barometric altitude. Okay, we are climbing good. Flaps can come up. Okay, flaps are up. Alright, let's keep our nose up. I don't want to smash into the buildings. Now we can turn on the autopilot and the yaw damper and set our vertical speed. And hopefully we will start climbing shortly. Let me see what's the rate. So we are going to climb at 1000 feet per second, and that's fine by me. I will let the stick go. So now the autopilot is taking care of the navigation here, and we can zoom out and see where we're at and take a look at beautiful London City at the same time. Oh my. Alright, we are climbing nicely. Let me see what the ATC was saying. Okay, it's fine. We'll probably get a little bit later, we'll probably get a higher altitude clearance, but for now I think we are good. Let's make sure we are not over torquing the engine. This aircraft is quite loud, so when you get to your cruise altitude, I suggest you to pull back on the RPM control to relieve the engines a little bit and reduce the noise. Otherwise this plane will make you deaf before you reach your destination. It's a very loud plane, but the view and the scenery looks amazing. So I'm gonna pause the track AR so that I don't shake my head and cause some, what was that called, motion sickness to you guys. So we are nicely climbing, as you see on the FMA flight mode and insuator. FMS's flight management system is turned on, autopilot and yaw damper is turned on. We are using vertical speed 1800 feet per minute and altitude select. This is our waypoint. Next one This is our bearing to that waypoint. This is the distance. This is the estimated time and route. And that's the ground speed. And that's the current track. It's a bummer that we don't get to see the wind information. But I think that's okay for now. Alright, we are climbing. Let's take a look at outside and try to see the aircraft. If I can reset the camera, because I just moved it to a completely off location to take a look at the airport from above when I was starting. So if I reset that, oh, that was quick. If you hear, this is how loud this aircraft is. But look at London City, guys. Oh my gosh, that wheel never gets old, I guess. Yeah. So we are on our way, and let's just start tracking our flight. We have a long way to go. I will probably wait until we pass 10,000 and we turn off the taxi lights. They need to be turned off way before we enter the runway, but I think that's fine. We will turn on the landing lights when we pass 10,000 feet, and I believe the standard barometric pressure setting for Great Britain or United Kingdom is 5,000 feet, but because we don't have a working altimeter knob, we are not able to switch to standard barometric pressure. And if I hit the B key, nothing changes, so we are stuck with the current setting pretty much. But yeah, we are getting close to 10,000. And despite these facts and all the missing functionality, I still like King Air. And let's take a look at the overhead panel and turn on the lights. And I'll want to show you that the display brightness, you can turn it on all the way up and the screens become more bright. I don't know if you can tell, or I can turn it all the way down and you see now the pilot displays are dimmed where the co-pilot display is still bright. So that's working, and it's an eye saver when you are flying in the night. The TBM930 doesn't have this option, and this is why I choose King Air 350 over TBM when I'm flying during night, or when I'm doing a night flight. But for now I think leaving displays there is fine. This is the pilot overhead floodlight, which is this guy right there, and that one is the co-pilot one, which is that one right there. And then this is okay, we have higher altitude clearance. Let's set that up here. 13,000, and then V speed, we can climb a little bit slower this time, like maybe 1500, and we passed 10,000, so we can switch off the landing lights. And I think we are good to go from here. Our cruising altitude, it was, I believe, 13,000. I can't remember what I set it up to, but we can check through the flight plan to see if we can see it here. Active flight plan, yeah, 13. So we are at our cruising altitude at the moment. What I will do is I will probably cut the video here and bring you guys back when we are ready to descend. So yeah guys, this is the startup and takeoff for King Air 350 and some additional functions. I will see you when we are ready to descend.